I'm leaning back in my chair in my office, on the phone with my crying mother. What I'm about to share with you is a love story, but it's a love story of a different kind. This one starts in Tanzania in the late 70s, when Mom and Dad were young teens, and Tanzania, much like the rest of the continent in that period, was reclaiming itself in a post-colonial world. To be clear, that was generally a good thing. But for those who didn't look indigenous like my parents, it wasn't. Land and businesses were taken, and in some cases, especially in neighboring Uganda, lives were lost. The message was clear: get out. Neither of my parents talked much about that time, and I suspect that has a lot to do with the fact that it was one of hardship and unfairness in their eyes. So they left. And as many immigrant families have done, they left in stages. Often, the most employable or adaptable were the first to resettle in a new land and build a bridge for the rest of the family to come over. In both my parents' cases, that was them for their respective families. They didn't know each other yet, but they were about the same age and both sent by their families to Toronto. Canada had just passed the Multicultural Act, and our spiritual leader, the Aga Khan, had made arrangements with his old university buddy, Pierre Trudeau, another story for another time, for safe passages for his persecuted people. The Aga Khan is the hereditary descendant of Prophet Muhammad and the leader of the Shia Ismaili Muslims, one of the smallest sects of Islam in the world, and certainly, and at least in my opinion, one of the most progressive. My parents were among the pioneers of their people, the Ismailis, to come here, and it was through co-creating their community in Toronto that they met and subsequently fell in love. I still look at pictures of Mom and Dad from when they were falling in love, and all I can see is earlier versions of myself. Dad with his volunteer badge, Mom teaching groups of children, Dad at the barbecue at the community picnic, Mom starting this thing called the Partnership Walk. They were leaders, like I've always aspired to be. One of my favorite pictures is of them holding a 1-year-old bow tie wearing baby, which was me, at an event that they had just created and that still exists today. They say that love conquers, but the kind of love that I like is the kind that creates. There are few things that can shake me to the core. I feel like I'm mostly impervious to a lot of hardships in this world, not for a lack of compassion, but given my general demeanor to default to optimism. But when Mom cries, I really feel it. Her tears reverberate through the phone as I hold it to my ear, and I clench my teeth remembering all the times she cried to me in the past. The breakup, the hard times when we had no money and no running water, the many other times I'm too shy to share at this point. The list goes on. Every time it happens, I resolve to try my best to never let Mom feel pain and suffering again. But I couldn't prevent their marriage from falling apart. And Mom and Dad's pioneering spirit got the best of them again as they became among the first in their community to divorce. This might not seem like a big deal now, but you see, divorce does not feel very immigrant. In our culture, there's a nobility in sticking through it. There's an imperativeness in saving face. I was recently reminded of this very fact when my grandfather passed away earlier this year. Dad told me that when he was cleaning his room, he found a stack of over 100 rejection letters that my grandfather received when he first moved to Canada and attempted to find a job. What struck Dad the most was that my grandfather never told anyone about this and that he suffered his rejection in isolation. Such was the experience that my mother endured. The community, our community, unfamiliar with what to do in a situation like divorce, sided with my higher profile father, and I watched my mom get shunned and shamed. I watched as her identity, her purpose, began to slip away as slowly she became unwelcome from the mosque and shut out as a community leader. I was 12 then. I was told that I was to be the man of the house, best friend to my isolated mother, and stand-in father for my two younger sisters. I was too young to understand it all, but one thing I did understand was the rage. I felt it for our community and their high horses. It was bad enough that we were suffering, but to shun us in our point of weakness was unraveling to my very faith. I don't think I've ever fully recovered. That was a transition point for my belief system. But Mom never let go. She held her head high, and while she was stripped of her leadership, she offered to volunteer in any way she could to find a way back in, starting at the very bottom again. In time, we regained our footing, and Mom started doing the things she loves again. She again became a community leader. More importantly, she just became a more full person and found new ways to experience joy, fulfillment, and love. Back to the phone call. I listen on the phone, reclining in my chair as she cries. She just told my dad that she's getting married again. 20 years of separation. Though it was the right choice, clearly wasn't enough to erase the love that once burned between them. She told me that he was gracious and that he told her that he was happy for her and thanked her for raising us. As much as the divorce ultimately did lead to all of our current happiness, I couldn't help but cry too. It was about 15 years after my parents divorced that Salim asked my mom out. Apparently he wanted to do it before Mom started dating Dad, and he lost his chance then, so he was certain to not lose it again. And this Saturday, my mother's getting married. I know why your first marriage is always special. In this case, her second is more special for both her and I. I just can't wait to tell her that when I toast to the two of them in 2 days. Thank you. Thank you.